Greetings, you're in the studio with me, Katerina Nesterenko. Today, here's what we're talking about. Russia is on fire. Arson attacks on relay cabinets are hitting military logistics. The armed forces have liberated 3 settlements in Donbas, but Russia is putting pressure on Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. Z-bloggers are exposing Gerasimov's lies about the encirclement of Ukrainians. Ukraine is striking with drones at occupied Crimea and in the Tula region. Explosions are also rocking there. Putin is afraid. He has surrounded Moscow with anti-aircraft systems and is threatening with a new nuclear missile. The FSB is accusing the opposition of preparing for a coup. Trump is silent, but the US is preparing new sanctions against Russia. And Kazakhstan is expelling Russian performers. All this and more in just a few seconds, but right now, please like this video and subscribe to the channel Ukraine Today so you don't get lost on YouTube. Well then, let's get started. Russia has been hit by an epidemic of fires. Sudden arson attacks on relay cabinets and electrical panels at railway junctions are paralyzing the Kremlin's military logistics. From Moscow to Irkutsk and Vologda, the infrastructure is ablaze. According to Ukrainian intelligence, this is the work of local resistance. The fires burn brighter and Russian homes grow darker, say members of the resistance, promising more fireworks to come. Meanwhile, as Russia sinks into chaos, Ukraine is advancing on the front lines. More on this ahead. Ukrainian forces continue their offensive operations in the Donbas. A blitz operation by the A-82 Separate Air Assault Bukovinian Brigade enabled the liberation of the village of Suketske, the destruction of enemy forces, and the capture of prisoners, according to the General Staff. In addition to Suketske, Ukrainian defenders have also liberated 2 more settlements in the Dobropilya direction, Kucherev Yar and Zatishok. Furthermore, according to Deep State, the Ukrainian defense forces pushed the enemy back in the areas of Mykonorivka, Novy Shakovy, and Fedorivka. But that's not all. Also, in the Dobropilya direction, the mechanized assaults by Russian soldiers literally bogged down in the mud. The occupiers tried to break through the defenses at Vladimirovka, but due to the mud, 3 armored vehicles got stuck in that very swamp. The Russian boys were forced to flee into the water to save themselves. But the artillery of the 33rd Brigade and HIMARS quickly destroyed the enemy's equipment and manpower, while FPV drones finished off the remnants. However, the situation in other directions remains tense. According to the Deep State portal, the Russians have advanced near Zverovoye and have achieved partial success in the areas of Novogrigorovka and Novoselovka. Russia struck a wind turbine in Kramatorsk for the 3rd time in a week. The enemy is deliberately targeting Ukrainian energy facilities. There is fierce fighting in the Kupiansk direction of Kharkiv region. The enemy is trying to break through to the city center, but the AFU is holding the defense. There is no danger of encirclement. None. Ukrainian forces are controlling the situation despite constant assaults from the direction of Stepova Novoselivka. This was reported by Viktor Trehubov, head of the communications department of the Joint Forces.
Of course, the Russians are trying to create such conditions. Right now, they are trying, among other things, to put pressure from the direction of Stepova Novoselivka and are attempting to break through the city itself, gain a foothold closer to the center, and advance further.
Disturbing news is coming from the Zaporizhzhia direction. People's Deputy Mariana Bezukhla. She announced a possible breakthrough by Russian troops and the loss of the last line of defense.
We are losing the last line, beyond which are Pavlograd, Dnipro, Kramatorsk, Izium, and Kharkiv. At the same time, there is a breakthrough in the Zaporizhzhia direction.
This information has not yet been confirmed by the General Staff, but in fact, fighting is taking place in Pokrovsk, Kostiantynivka, and Kupiansk. The enemy is trying to gain a foothold in the center of the cities. Ukrainian forces continue to hold the front line, inflicting losses on the enemy. Significant losses? I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing against a vast horde that greatly outnumbers them. That's why I urge you to support the armed forces of Ukraine, and if you can't do so financially, write them words of encouragement in the comments. I know they are watching us. The Russian chief of the General Staff, Gerasimov, officially announced the encirclement by Russian troops, Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. Gerasimov reported to Putin about 2 encirclements. And Pokrovsk was presented as the main trophy.
In the area of operations of the West Troop Grouping, the city of Kupiansk has been encircled. According to the center grouping, units and military formations of the 2nd and 51st Armies advancing from converging directions completed the encirclement of the enemy in the area of Krasnoarmeysk and Dimitrovo. a large grouping of the armed forces, has been blockaded. Ukraine, consisting of 31 battalions, including units from the 25th Airborne, 79th Air Assault, and 68th Jaeger Brigades, as well as the 35th and 38th Marine Brigades, the 425th Separate Assault Regiment, and the 153rd and 155th Mechanized Brigades.
But this is an outright lie. Even the pro-war bloggers were outraged by such fake information. In reality, neither Pokrovsk nor Kupiansk were encircled despite the enemy's months-long attempts. The Russian occupiers continue their offensive there. The situation is tense, but there is no epic encirclement. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that about 200 Russian occupiers did indeed manage to enter Pokrovsk. They infiltrated the city, bypassing the positions of the defense forces. Small arms battles are ongoing in the city, and drone units are actively operating. Ukrainian soldiers are working to stabilize the situation and are not allowing the Russians to gain a foothold in the city. Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of you are watching us from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We, Ukrainians, are very grateful for your support and proud to have such reasonable viewers. Let us know in the comments under this episode as well, which country are you watching us from, and do people there support our fight against the empire of evil? I always enjoy reading your comments. And now let's continue. The most interesting part is coming up. Ukraine is a leader in global weapons production. First and foremost, this refers to drones, both aerial and maritime. What new and effective technologies are rolling off the assembly lines of Ukrainian defense enterprises, and how is this changing the course of the war in Ukraine's favor?
The Ukrainian defense industry is gaining momentum. Ukraine is becoming a world leader in weapons production.
Europe must help Ukraine become a steel porcupine that no aggressor can overcome.
The Security Service of Ukraine has demonstrated new Sea Baby maritime drones which have already been tested in combat. The upgraded Sea Babies are capable of traveling more than 1,500 kilometers and carrying up to 2 tons of cargo. 2 versions have been presented. One is equipped with a machine gun mount and an automatic target recognition and tracking system. The second is the Grad maritime platform with a 10-round multiple launch rocket system.
Our drones have changed the balance of power in the Black Sea and have proven their effectiveness. The new generation of Sea Baby is even more effective. Therefore, the work to clear the Black Sea of the Russian fleet will continue in the future.
In addition, the upgraded drones are equipped with reinforced engines and a modern navigation system. Earlier in June 2025, new models of maritime drones were used during the strike on the Crimean bridge.
We approached by land, we approached across the water's surface, and in 2025 we approached underwater. There were 2 strikes, each with a power equivalent to 1.1 tons of TNT. As a result, they were seriously damaged. Its key supports the so-called piers. Essentially, the bridge now operates with a limit of no more than 5 tons, with only trucks moving across it. The enemy is not conducting any military logistics there.
Ukraine's allies are in no hurry when it comes to supplying long-range missiles, which the Ukrainian armed forces could use to destroy legitimate military targets of the occupiers. Deep in the Russian rear,
The story in the Wall Street Journal claiming that the US has supposedly approved the use of Ukrainian long-range missiles to strike deep inside Russia. Fake news. The US has nothing to do with these missiles.
Kyiv, for its part, has focused on producing a wide range of its own long-range missiles and drones, which are regularly used to strike targets on Russian territory.
To be completely honest, it's an absolute nightmare. Things are getting completely wild and out of control. I absolutely love it, every single moment of it. Damn, this is just unbelievable.
Damn, yeah. As of today, Ukraine is now able to produce on a monthly basis dozens of advanced long-range missiles each and every month, such as the highly capable long-range Neptune and the formidable foaming missiles, as well as thousands upon thousands of long-range rocket-powered drones that are used for a variety of military purposes.
In order to somehow bring this war to a stalemate, to shift it, we need to learn not only to repel enemy attacks on the front line, but also to suppress their logistics and their air force. That's why these are needed. And I'm not even mentioning the necessity of striking Russia's military-industrial enterprises and its energy system.
Weapons manufacturers have not forgotten about the Ukrainian goddess of war, Bodana, either. This year, Ukraine became the world leader in the production of self-propelled artillery systems.
Artillery remains the queen, and Ukraine has mastered the production of howitzers.
Despite the role of FPV drones on the front line, artillery has several advantages over unmanned aerial vehicles. First of all, its range of fire. For the Bodana, this figure is 45 kilometers. The shells are inexpensive, immune to radio interference, and extremely effective against enemy infantry.
The warhead. In other words, these are completely different capabilities for striking both personnel and, accordingly, equipment and command posts. The enemy's permanent temporary deployment locations. If the FPV drone targets a single objective, meaning a specific serviceman of the occupying army, then accordingly the Bodana self-propelled artillery system is designed to strike entire areas. In other words, this is what holds back the so-called local assaults by the Russian occupiers.
A protracted war and defense in such a war require quick and effective solutions from Ukrainian military engineers. While the Russian occupiers continue to dream of demilitarization, Ukraine is gradually becoming the world's largest arms forge.
Ukrainian drones are not just weapons. They are a real nightmare for the occupiers. The main intelligence directorate of Ukraine delivered a devastating blow to temporarily occupied Crimea, destroying 3 radar stations and 1 boat. The air defense and Russian fleet have been blinded. This is a serious blow to Russia's ability to control the air and sea space of the peninsula. Nights in the Tula region are now restless. According to Russian media, on the night of October 25th, more than 10 powerful explosions occurred there due to Ukrainian drones.
Ready? Below, right below, just underneath the area we are focusing on. You will find it directly below the specified point.
The governor of the Tula region, Dayumin, confirmed the interception of the drones without specifying the damage. And while explosions are being discussed all over Russia and people are talking about Ukrainian drones, a map of air defense positions around Moscow has appeared online. OSINT analysts note that the locations of Panzer, S-300 and S-400 systems are constantly being moved. This is a sign that the Kremlin fears long-range strikes from Ukraine and is strengthening the defense of the Russian capital. The Kremlin is in a panic. Putin is afraid of a coup, seeing a threat in every move made by the opposition, writes Zattelgraph. After Prigozhin's mutiny in 2023, which ended with his accidental death, the dictator trusts no one. The FSB is accusing Mikhail Khodorkovsky in London and 22 members of the anti-war committee of preparing one. A violent seizure of power. But this is not a coup plan. This is Putin's fear of the void. Without him, there is no successor. And the puppets in the government and courts won't be able to hold on to power. In
the Kremlin, there is paranoia. Putin is searching for enemies to save the regime, noted former US Ambassador John Herbst.
Khodorkovsky, who survived 10 years in a Siberian prison, is merely uniting anti-war activists. But the Kremlin trembles at his international support. Zatal Igrov emphasizes this. The totalitarian regime is cracking and Putin's fear is its main weakness. Putin, despite numerous statements that Russia wants peace, continues to strengthen his position, and Ukraine faces the prospect of a protracted war. The Wall Street Journal reports that the fighting could continue for many more years. It is said that the war will be long and will go through several stages. This is in the context of the transfer of Gripen fighter jets to Ukraine, according to the Ukrainian monitoring channel. Mykolaiv Svanek.
If the Gripens are delivered to us during this stage of the war, and I think by now we are all convinced that the war will last a long time and there will be several stages, then this will really give a serious boost to our Air Force.
This is also confirmed by the fact that Russia has unveiled a new cruise missile with a nuclear engine, the Burevestnik. This missile has already even been tested, and Putin stated that it is capable of bypassing any missile defense system.
I asked the Chief of the General Staff to provide a detailed report on another significant event, which I briefly mentioned in my opening remarks. This concerns the test of the Burevestnik cruise missile with unlimited range and a nuclear power unit. I know that I have a report from the industry side as well, and overall I am aware of the assessments from the Ministry of Defense. This is, after all, a unique product that no one else in the world possesses.
While Putin is testing yet another missile, his special representative Kirill Dmitriev made a statement that only confirms this. Russia has no intention of ending the war.
They say that Russia must leave Ukraine, but that simply cannot happen. So from the very beginning, they are set up for failure. Russia is ready to end the war through diplomatic means, but there are conditions for protecting Russian speakers, territorially, and a neutral status for Ukraine.
In short, everything is following the old scenario. It's time to admit it. To believe that Russia truly wants to end the war in Ukraine is extremely naive.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
US President Donald Trump stated that a new meeting with Putin is possible, but only if there is a real understanding about reaching a deal for a peaceful resolution of the war in Ukraine. In an urgent case, according to Trump, he does not intend to waste his time. Meanwhile, as reported by Reuters, the US has prepared a new package of sanctions against key sectors of the Russian economy, but is waiting for action from Europe. According to the agency, the new measures could come into effect if the Kremlin continues its war against Ukraine. Washington wants Europe to be the first to increase pressure on Moscow through new sanctions or tariffs. It is worth noting that after the US imposed sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil on October 22nd, their market capitalization dropped by $5.2 billion in just 2 days. The sanctions imposed by the White House against Russia are devastating and work like a house of cards. The economy of Putin's Russia will collapse in the coming months, and this will hit the wallet of every Russian hard. America took a long time to get going, but then quickly moved to action. They even managed to affect China. More on this in our report.
Trump is disappointed in Putin. Olga officially cancelled the meeting with the Russian president in Budapest and hit Moscow with powerful sanctions.
The president wants action, not just talk. I think the president is very motivated by the success of his peace agreement in the Middle East. He wants to achieve the same result, here as well. He wants this war to end. And he has been repeating this for 9 months while in office, and he is becoming increasingly disappointed by the lack of progress from both sides in this war.
Sanctions have been imposed on Russia's largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. The reason? Moscow has no desire for a ceasefire. For many, this statement only provoked a smirk. The Kremlin's position has long been known. But Trump seems to have only just realized this, and the Russian army played a part in it. As CNN reports, Trump decided to tighten sanctions against Russia after the strike on a kindergarten in Kharkiv. It was this strike that became a turning point for Trump. He decided to act more harshly, though still not as tough as the Ukrainians would have liked. And the Wall Street Journal confirms this. According to the publication, Trump was offered 3 options for sanctions against Russia. The harshest option targeted Russian industry and the country's top leadership. The middle option targeted Russia's energy sector. And the mildest included limited measures. The American president chose the middle level of severity.
Trump is a player when it comes to business. And when he chose the option that was in the middle, my logic is as follows. He is showing Putin that things could be better or they could be worse. And right now, this is how it is. And that apparently words have probably already run out. I mean, faith in words. Putin's faith in words is gone.
The Russian dictator himself has taken his usual position. He insists that Russia doesn't care about the sanctions. He stated that supposedly the new sanctions will not significantly affect Russia's economic well-being.
It's an attempt to put pressure on Russia, but no truly self-respecting country and no self-respecting people ever make important decisions under pressure.
Trump didn't just let it slide by, he didn't let it go at all.
Putin declared that Russia is invulnerable to US sanctions.
I'm glad he thinks so. Let's see in 6 months.
The sanctions are quite serious. This has already affected the relevant purchases of Russian oil, in particular not only by Indian but also by Chinese state-owned oil refining companies. Again, this will affect a large portion of Russia's global oil exports. So, of course, all this will hit Russian revenues, but naturally, not immediately, not instantly. Trump himself, in fact, hinted that the time frame when these sanctions might start to take effect is roughly 6 months.
With his statement, Putin essentially rejected the possibility of a ceasefire. At the same time, the Kremlin still insists that a meeting between Putin and Trump could take place in the future.
Neither Trump nor Putin, they've both said this, want to waste time. And they don't want to meet just for the sake of meeting. For their meeting to be productive, it is necessary that at the level, as determined by the heads of state, the foreign ministers of Russia, and the Secretary of State of the USSR, work has been done.
But there's no need to expect it to happen anytime soon. Trump wants finally not just to hear, but to see actions from the Russian side. But Putin himself has no intention of doing that, and his reaction to the restrictions is proof of that. On the
one hand, of course, Putin. He probably could have made some concessions, but after sanctions were imposed on him, concessions in Putin's worldview would mean showing weakness. That is, it would look like he was forced to make concessions under the threat of sanctions and the imposition of sanctions. And he keeps repeating that sanctions don't work, that they play no role at all, that sanctions are actually beneficial for Russia, and so on in that vein. So ideologically, he simply cannot accept that he was forced into such negotiations because of sanctions. That's why, obviously, for now, the question of a meeting between Trump and Putin is not relevant.
But Putin could still be convinced otherwise. There is only one person who can do that, Xi Jinping. And pure coincidence, Trump is meeting with him on October 30th.
I think that Trump might even try, maybe, perhaps, to use Xi's influence on Putin. How significant that influence is, that's the question. That influence, because I think we tend to exaggerate the idea that if Xi says something, Putin will just sit there like a loyal dog and do nothing. No, that's not how it works at all. Because there are completely different mechanisms at play there. Does China want this war to stop? Of course not. Right now, everything suits them except for these sanctions, which are currently irritating them.
The American sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil are hitting the Chinese oil market. China has already stated that these restrictions supposedly have no basis in international law and were not approved by the UN Security Council. But it's possible that this is exactly the kind of pressure that was needed. Xi Jinping is dissatisfied and may force Putin to act.
Russia is ready to invade the Baltic states. The Kremlin is following the Ukraine 22 scenario. Under the guise of fighting invented Nazism, Russia, having probed the weaknesses of NATO's eastern flank, is about to invade Latvia.
Representatives of NATO countries, particularly those in Europe and especially in the smaller nations, really need to take the time to fully understand the situation they are dealing with. It is important for them to carefully consider the challenges and complexities involved so they can be well prepared and make informed decisions.
After Ukraine, it's the Baltics.
When Russian people are simply thrown out across the border, you see, these are very serious matters that directly affect the security of our country.
Vladimir Putin is a threat not only to Ukraine's security, but also to the independence of other states. The Latvian Ministry of Foreign Affairs officially denied permission for a plane carrying Putin to fly through its airspace. This decision is not just a diplomatic gesture, it is a direct reminder to the Kremlin that, for the civilized world, Putin is the subject of an international criminal court warrant. And this was followed by a new provocation from the Kremlin. Russian military aircraft violated Lithuanian airspace. NATO fighter jets were scrambled to intercept.
This is a blatant violation of international law and Lithuania's territorial integrity. This once again underscores the importance of strengthening the readiness of European air defense forces.
Before this, Russian fighter jets were over Estonia. 2 more Russian aircraft appeared over an oil and gas platform, Petrobaltic in the Baltic Sea. Russia has stepped up provocations against NATO countries in September. As for hybrid forms of aggression, the Kremlin employs them
and in just 5 years, Russia could be ready to go to war against NATO.
For Putin, the capture of Ukraine is not the goal, but a stage. His plans involve reviving the Soviet sphere of influence, where the independence of neighboring countries is seen as merely a temporary misunderstanding.
Here are the countries that were considered the most unfriendly, where in fact there are a lot of relocants, and Putin received 56.82% of the vote. In Estonia, it was 75.22%. In Latvia, 70.6%.
In addition to military provocations, Russians are carrying out various cyber attacks.
Estonia is planning over the next 4 years to increase military spending to 5.4% of GDP, And right now, Estonia is already strengthening its border with our country.
Russia can come up with hundreds of pretexts for an invasion. The Kremlin has already found familiar narratives for the Baltic countries to justify its invasion.
In fact, it really can be called fascism, truly, when the authorities, they do absolutely everything possible to forcibly assimilate people, including ethnic Russians as well as other peoples. Therefore, of course, everything that is happening now in Latvia is a tragedy. In fact, there are the same kind of criminals there.
They openly declare the liberation of brotherly peoples, the granting of additional rights and freedoms, as well as support for Russian speakers. Already today, in the narratives of Kremlin propaganda, Narva is portrayed as a city where Russians are actively oppressed by Estonians.
The Russian language is not taught as such, not even as an elective. And that's why I'm changing jobs, moving to an Orthodox gymnasium where the Russian language and culture are preserved.
The Kremlin has already outlined plans to increase military production and deploy additional troops along their borders. This is reported by the Institute for the Study of War.
Kremlin officials continue to apply to the Baltic countries the same narratives that Russia has used to justify its invasions of former Soviet republics over the past 3 decades.
The Kremlin continues to look for pretexts. The next excuse could be the Moscow-Kaliningrad passenger train, which passes through Lithuanian territory. The Kremlin is quite capable of using it as a pretext for invasion under the guise of saving peaceful citizens.
No, there is no sense of alarm. There is an expectation of trouble.
There might be a provocation staged in the Suwałki corridor on the border between Lithuania and Poland.
This enclave is a real trap for Russia. The shortest supply route for troops there is by land, through Polish territory, past the city of Suwałki. In the West, it is believed that if war breaks out, Russia will definitely want to break through at this spot, a corridor to supply the Kaliningrad region. In
Putin's vision of the world, not only the Baltic states and Ukraine should submit to Russia, but also part of Poland and Finland.
If Russia really wants to seize the Baltic states, it will have to do so very quickly. The threatened period, which usually precedes a war, would need to be shortened as much as possible in order not to reveal its intentions.
Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. Estonia is concerned about the increase in Russia's military spending, so they are developing an evacuation plan for their 1 million residents in case of a Russian invasion. At the same time, they firmly believe that NATO's Article 5 will still work.
I think we've been having this conversation since February 2022 and in part even since March 2014 when Russia first attacked Ukraine and annexed Crimea. The US is no longer willing to defend Europe, as I say, for free. They want Europeans to do their part, and I think that's a fair demand. Of course, it's not easy because it means having to cut spending. For example, it means not being able to fund education, healthcare and social security as well as we would like. But as a frontline state, we understand what is at stake. And coming back to Article 5, people often recall the Budapest Memorandum and compare Ukraine and NATO guarantees. But there is a difference, and it's a very significant one. Ukraine is not a member of the alliance, and the fact that Russia so fiercely opposes Ukraine joining NATO and receiving Article 5 guarantees is, to me, proof in itself. Article 5 works.
The scenario of a sudden strike on the alliance's eastern flank is no longer a fantasy. It has become a matter of time and of the West's readiness to respond. Latvia has tightened its migration rules. Those Russians who did not pass the exam or did not submit their documents for permanent resident status in the European Union on time are required to leave the country in Latvia. In addition, starting from November 1st, irregular bus passenger transportation from Latvia to Russia and Belarus will be prohibited. At the border with Russia, the restoration of peat bogs will begin to create a natural barrier for troops in the event of aggression. For now, NATO remains confident that an open conflict with Russia can be avoided, at least while the Kremlin is preoccupied with the war against Ukraine. However, history teaches us that what seemed impossible yesterday can become reality today.
Kazakhstan continues to cancel concerts by Russian artists. This time, the Russian singer Akmal was subject to a mass cancellation. These are artists who openly support Russia's war against Ukraine. During one of his concerts in Kazakhstan, he made a pro-Russian statement and was immediately added to the list of artists whose performances are now being cancelled in the country.
Hello to all my dear and beloved listeners from the city of Kazakhstan. Today, we were supposed to have a concert in your wonderful city, but due to problems at the power plant and issues with electricity, unfortunately, we are unable to start our concert.
It seems that Akmal, the singer, didn't like the colors. They reminded him of blue and yellow, like on the Ukrainian flag. However, the flag of Kazakhstan is also blue and yellow. And more importantly, Kazakhstan has consistently been cancelling concerts of artists who support Russian aggression against Ukraine. Previously, let me remind you, concerts by the Russian rapper Timati and singer Polina Gagarina were cancelled in Kazakhstan for the same reason. That's why I would like to sincerely thank Kazakhstan for its principled stance in support of Ukraine. This is very important and valuable because artists who support a war of aggression cannot possibly be outside of politics. That's all for now. Please like this video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. See you next time.